Across the wires and through the air, those who seek will find me there. Story, wonder, voice, and art, find the ears and find the heart. Welcome, dear listener, to Wishcrafting. Today, we are taking a slight veer off course from our regular Almanac episodes, because today we are spending the whole episode in the cosmic cauldron and focusing in on what I believe may be one of the most important astrological transits of the year, and perhaps even the decade, which is Chiron moving into Taurus. Today, we're going to learn all about Chiron, who he was in mythology and what he is to astrology today, and then we're going to go sign by sign and learn what this energy shift might look like for you. But have no fear. At the end of the episode, we're still going to take a sneak peek into the astro forecast of July. Though this Almanac episode is going to look a little bit different, we will be back to the regular format in August. With that, the cosmic cauldron has begun to boil, so let's go dive in. On June 19th, 2026, Chiron left Aries and entered into Taurus for the first time. Now, this is not a permanent move just yet. On September 18th, Chiron will retrograde back into Aries, where it will remain until April 14th, 2027. Then, it returns to Taurus and will stay there until July of 2033. So, what we're experiencing right now is a little peek, a first glimpse into the next chapter. So if you've been feeling exhausted, or you've been feeling like you've spent the last several years fighting for your identity, your boundaries, or your place in the world, then you may already be sensing this shift. Because Chiron is leaving a fire sign and entering into an earth sign. It's leaving the new frontier and entering into the garden. Today, I want to explore with you who Chiron is, both in mythology and astrology. So we're going to look back on the lessons of Chiron in Aries and reflect on what the last 7 years have been trying to teach us. And then we're going to step forward into the new great chapter, Chiron in Taurus. We're going to ask questions like, what wounds does this reveal, and what healing does this offer? And what happens when the wounded healer asks us to rest? To understand Chiron in astrology, we first have to understand Chiron in mythology. Chiron was a centaur, which is a half man, half horse. But unlike the other centaurs of Greek myth, he wasn't known for drunkenness, violence, or wild behavior. He was different. He was wise, disciplined, and compassionate. He was a teacher. Many of Greece's greatest leading men studied under Chiron. And you might notice that I didn't call them heroes, because, to be quite honest, most of these men really sucked. But names like Achilles and Jason are in the retinue of famous pupils that did great things with the teachings of Chiron. Perhaps the most famous pupil is Asclepius, the son of Apollo. Depending on the story, the maternal half of his parentage changes. Sometimes he doesn't even have a mother, and Apollo births him all on his own. Whatever the story, though, Asclepius is born. He spends some time with Apollo before being handed off to be raised by Chiron. As a demigod, he is naturally gifted. He was so skilled in the healing arts taught under Chiron's tutelage that he discovered how to medically resurrect the dead. Asclepius is a fascinating figure, and his story has so much more that we could explore, but for now, just know that he became the god of medicine, which is a pretty big deal. And Chiron had a habit of molding bright minds into pretty big deals. Chiron taught healing, music, astronomy, hunting, ethics, and warfare. He was the mentor that heroes sought when they needed wisdom. But Chiron's story is not famous because of what he taught. Rather, he's famous because of what happened to him. And that story goes like this. One day, during an accident involving Heracles, Chiron was struck by a poisoned arrow. During a chaotic battle between Heracles and a frenzied pack of centaurs, a truly tragic mistake altered Chiron's fate forever. An arrow that was meant for an attacking centaur missed its intended target and accidentally struck Chiron in the knee. But this was not just any arrow. This arrow was dipped in the blood of the Hydra, the infamous many-headed monster of Greek myth, and it had no cure. For nearly all beings, this wound would have been fatal, but Chiron was immortal. He couldn't die. And yet, this wound he could not heal. Imagine that for a moment. The greatest known healer in the world, unable to heal himself, and forced to carry a wound that never fully closes. Instead, the Hydra venom caused him continuous, excruciating agony that his profound medical knowledge could not fix. He was trapped in a horrific loop of eternal life and endless physical torment, unable to find release through death. Horrific, right? Why are Greek myths always so damn egregious? Anyway, desperate to escape the unrelenting pain, Chiron sought a way to relinquish his immortality. After way too long, a solution finally emerges, and it involves Prometheus. Prometheus is the Titan who was chained to a rock in the Caucasus Mountains as a very cruel punishment from Zeus for giving fire to humanity. A very horrendous transgression, apparently. Zeus had decreed that Prometheus could only be released if an immortal volunteered to die in his place. So, Chiron offered himself as the substitute, willingly trading his eternal life to end his own suffering and to break Prometheus's chains. Zeus accepted the bargain, allowing Heracles to kill the eagle that was torturing Prometheus and to break his bonds. Chiron was finally permitted to die, finding peace in the underworld at last. But y'all, at this point, Chiron was beyond famous. Everyone had heard of his great skill and the great tragedy that had befallen him. So when he finally crossed over, everyone was moved by the wise centaur's noble sacrifice. It was the sacrifice of a lifetime, for a life that was full to the brim with service. And Zeus refused to let Chiron be forgotten for exactly that reason. It was one of the few moments in myth where we see Zeus make a truly noble decision. The king of the gods placed Chiron among the stars, transforming him into a constellation. This celestial honor ensured his legacy of wisdom, healing, and selflessness would endure for eternity. This constellation is called Taurus, and in the southern hemisphere it's very easy to locate because it climbs high overhead in the evenings. In the northern hemisphere, it's only fully visible from tropical or equatorial latitudes. If you're in the continental US or Europe, you can only see the topmost human portion of the constellation peaking just above the southern horizon during late spring. Anyway, this story is how Chiron became the blueprint for the archetype of the wounded healer. not because he was broken, but because he learned something profound. Some wounds never disappear completely. Yet, they can still become sources of wisdom, compassion, understanding, and service. Chiron has to go through quite the journey once he receives that wound in a fight that wasn't his fight. He's an innocent and he's wounded, and the wounding kicks off a journey where he has to retreat away from everyone and everything, returning to the self, to find acceptance, and then to find compassion, so that he can open his mind and his heart enough to see new pathways to healing. Eventually, Chiron relinquished his immortality and was placed among the stars in what metaphorically is Chiron's complete release of the ego. He learns that he and we must go within the self before we can go without again, only to find that we need to go back into the self in a never-ending cycle that is a spiral. In Chiron's story, the wounded healer learns the spiral nature of inner healing, and he frees himself by spiraling in and out over and over until he finally reaches a place of true acceptance, true release, and only from that place can he be reborn, truly reborn, releasing his ego and freeing himself. It's a beautiful story that within holds a mystery that you could study for a lifetime. And 1,000 years later, after his story was told over and over and over again, and the mystery was explored over and over and over again, his name would be given to a strange little object orbiting our sun. Because in 1977, astronomers discovered Chiron orbiting between Saturn and Uranus. This alone is fascinating. Saturn represents structure, boundaries, what is known. Uranus represents revolution and awakening, the unknown. Chiron moves between them, creating a bridge, tradition and transformation, pain and breakthrough, the known and the unknown. Chiron is a bridge between it all. And astronomically, Chiron doesn't fit neatly into categories. It's classified as a centaur object, half and half. It's part asteroid, part comet, existing between definitions, much like the mythological Chiron himself. Astrologically, Chiron represents wounds, healing, mentorship, wisdom, vulnerability, and the lessons that we gain through our deepest wounds, our deepest pain. Not the places where we are doomed, the places that we are learning, the places where life asks us, what if the wound is the medicine? In 2018, Chiron entered Aries before retrograding and then settling into Aries for good in 2019. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, the newborn's cry, the spark of life, instinct. Aries is the declaration, I am. For nearly 8 years, Chiron has been moving through this terrain, which means that collectively we have been wrestling with questions of identity. Questions like, who am I? What do I stand for? How do I take up space? And can I trust myself? Perhaps most importantly, we've been asking, can I fully be myself in a world that constantly tells me who I should be? The years since 2019 have certainly reflected these themes. We've had social upheaval, political polarization, identity movements, and questions of belonging and rights. Hell, the fact that the conversation of who gets to exist safely and openly, being prominent and never ending on the global stage, is incredibly Chiron in Aries. Collectively and individually, Chiron in Aries has asked us to confront the wounds that surround our right to be ourselves. And because Chiron works slowly, these lessons have unfolded differently for each sign. Let's quickly recap what stories Chiron has been telling for you based on your sign for the past 7 years of Chiron in Aries. Starting with Aries and Aries rising, this journey has been about self-trust, about remembering who you were before fear, rejection, or criticism convinced you to doubt yourself. Over the last 7 years, Chiron has asked you to trust your instincts, trust your body, and trust your own wisdom. For Taurus and Taurus rising, healing has happened in the hidden places, in private battles, in old fears, in moments when you realized that you had been abandoning yourself. This transit has taught you that compassion is important, but that it will always fall flat until the compassion includes yourself. And this transit also taught you that anger, when used wisely, can become a force that protects what is sacred. And both of these lessons go hand in hand. For Geminis and Gemini risings, the lesson has been belonging. Who are your people? Where are your communities? Who helps carry the weight when life becomes difficult? Chiron has shown you that independence and support are not opposites, that healing can happen alone, but it can also happen together. For 7 years, you've been building up a strong foundation that allowed you to really clarify, integrate, and then create the harmony that you once thought was just a pipe dream. For Cancer and Cancer risings, Chiron has illuminated your public life, your calling, your visibility, and your willingness to be seen. Many Cancers have spent these years discovering that vulnerability is not weakness, a hard as fuck lesson for Cancer at any point, but especially with Chiron and Aries. In fact, integrating this lesson may be the bravest thing that you can offer the world, because during these 7 years, you have explored the fact that you not only have gifts to offer the world, but you've also begun to really and truly believe in those gifts and find worthiness within yourself. As Chiron moves out of Aries, the way that you allow yourself to be seen may shift in a way that feels just right. And I love that for you. For Leos and Leo risings, the classroom has been belief itself. Your philosophies, your worldview, your sense of belonging. You may have questioned traditions and your inherited assumptions, or even communities that once felt like home. Because the lesson has been learning that belonging isn't always about fitting in, rather it's about honoring your truth and showing up authentically. For 7 years, you have been working on what showing up authentically means for you, and how to lovingly release the people and places that don't align with that. For Virgos and Virgo risings, Chiron has led you into the territory of grief, loss, fear, and transformation. Instead of avoiding pain, you've been learning that pain can be survived, that healing often begins when we stop running from what hurts and turn to it with curiosity that eventually melts into loving compassion for yourself. This is hard work, and your entire world may look different than it did 7 years ago. So, good job, Virgo, and don't give up. Libras and Libra risings are going to find that relationships have been the teacher for Chiron and Aries. Some of these relationships brought healing, and some brought heartbreak. Most of them brought both. Throughout this transit, Chiron has asked you to examine old patterns and relationship wounds while learning how to keep your heart open in the face of it all. Scorpio and Scorpio risings have found that healing has taken a practical form through health and habits. You've been learning that recovery is often built one small choice at a time. A lesson that is deceivingly simple, yet has been chipping away for 7 years to get you to a place where you can actually believe that you're worth taking care of. For Sagittarius and Sagittarius risings, Chiron prescribed a trip right back to Sagittarian basics. Joy, creativity, play, pleasure, laughter. In a world obsessed with productivity, your medicine under this transit may have been remembering how to enjoy being alive. I'm a Sagittarius rising, and this is very true for me. I have a core belief that play is our birthright, and through this transit, I was definitely spiraling towards remembering this truth, and only very recently does it feel like it finally anchored in my heart, and that it did so in such a way that I can carry it with me every day. For Capricorns and Capricorn risings, the work has been centered on family, ancestry, and inherited stories with Chiron and Aries. You had been considering what patterned behaviors were handed down to you and which of those patterns truly belong to you or not. And for 7 years, you have been becoming the author of your own story. Hell yeah, brother. For Aquariuses and Aquarius risings, Chiron has taught through learning and communication. You may have spent years studying, reading, researching, and seeking understanding. Eventually, you started to see that the lesson through this transit was really about sharing what you've learned and turning your wisdom into medicine for yourself and for others. And finally, we come to Pisces and Pisces risings. For y'all, Chiron has illuminated self-worth through the lens of survival. Your relationship to money and resources has been under the microscope through this transit. You've been examining how you receive help and support, and for 7 years you have been recognizing that your needs matter and that you are deserving of support. And most importantly, you've been integrating that asking for help does not mean that you're weak. And here we are, with Chiron just crossing over the edge of a new threshold, a new landscape. On June 19th, Chiron entered Taurus. And it's going to be there for just a minute before it briefly returns to Aries. Almost like the wounded healer is looking back over its shoulder one final time. One final review. A final opportunity to answer the question always at the forefront of Aries energy. Who am I? A necessary review to the prerequisite for this move into Taurus, because Taurus asks, what do I value? Who am I elevates to what do I value? And you can't find what you value without knowing who you are. So these things go hand in hand, and they're part of that spiral path. Beneath both of those questions, and at the center and heart, perhaps, of this spiral path, with Chiron and Taurus, a softer shadow whispers to us the question, can I find peace? If Chiron in Aries was about accepting being deserving of healing by affirming I am in whatever way that showed up for you, Chiron in Taurus is about creating the conditions that allow healing to happen. Collectively, Chiron in Taurus explores the wound of worth, the wound of enoughness, a release of the fear that we're only valuable when we're productive, the fear that safety can disappear at any moment, the fear that rest has to be earned, the fear that there is never enough. Enoughness is a core wound in Taurus. Is there enough money, enough time, enough resources, enough success, enough worth? These are sitting at the heart of the work that we will all be doing during this transit. Taurus also governs the body. It governs food, land, resources, pleasure, comfort, stability. And over the next 7 years, these become the places where our wounds and our healing may emerge and invite us in to go deeper. But there's more. This is a very long transit, after all. One of the greatest lessons of Chiron and Taurus might be astonishingly simple, and that is rest, because rest is necessary. We live in a culture that rewards exhaustion, and many of us have been taught to wear burnout like a gold star, but Taurus rejects this completely. Healing happens in recovery. The body repairs itself during sleep. The nervous system settles into safety when we are still. Physical and spiritual growth often occur during periods of stillness. The earth itself rests, and winter exists for a reason. The teeny tiny seeds that create the lush beauty of our planet spend much of their lives underground, just as we metaphorically do on our journey to know ourself. What I'm getting at here is that healing isn't always active. Sometimes it's receptive. And Taurus really helps us to understand how that shows up for us personally in our lives. Taurus is an earth sign in the most literal sense. Soil, food, forests, fields, resources. As Chiron moves through Taurus, we may collectively become more aware of damaged ecosystems, food security, land stewardship, and the consequences of treating the earth as something to extract from, rather than something that we belong to. But don't lose hope, because Chiron always offers medicine alongside the wound. This transit might coincide with renewed interest in things I'm already a part of, and already seeing an upswing of interest in, like regenerative agriculture, conservation, native plants, restoration, and just rebuilding our relationship with the living world around us. Taurus is also about peace. If there is one phrase I would associate with Chiron and Taurus, it's this: protect your peace. But that's a double-edged sword, because I'm not saying protect your peace as in avoidance or denial, but rather protect your peace as in stewardship, as in viewing it as something sacred and precious. Because, my dear listener, anxiety thrives where safety is not. Anxiety thrives where safety is absent. And Taurus teaches us that healing has requirements. It has conditions, like sleep and nourishment and comfort and support and stability and basic needs being met. All these things matter more than we often allow ourselves to believe. Now, as the wounded healer, Chiron teaches us that the places life has cracked open may become the places where wisdom enters. For 7, almost 8 years, Chiron in Aries has asked us to discover who we are beneath fear. Now Chiron begins its journey into Taurus and asks something entirely different. It asks, can you believe that you are enough? Can you rest? Can you receive? Can you allow yourself to belong to this world? The wounded healer is leaving the battlefield where we fought for our place in the world. And now it's stepping into the garden where the medicine waiting for us is the lesson where we finally learn how to come home to ourselves. Now that we've covered the collective energy, let's go ahead and glance sign by sign and see what Chiron in Taurus might look like for you specifically. But please remember that these aren't predictions. Chiron moves slowly, so think of these as the classrooms that Chiron is going to be teaching from for your own personal curriculum over the next 7 years. These are the themes that may ask for your attention, your courage, and ultimately your healing throughout this transit. Most of all, I want you to remember that healing is not a line, it's not a circle, but it's a spiral. It's a spiral dance that we are all participating in, whether consciously or subconsciously. And astrology is the tool that I hope you decide to wield so that you may do that spiral dance a little bit more self-actualized, a little bit more realized, a little bit more rooted, and so that when you are a little bit more actualized, realized, and rooted, you can enjoy that dance. You can welcome joy and wonder back into it. That's what I'm all about on this podcast. So, with that being said, let's get into it. Starting with Aries and Aries rising. After nearly a decade of Chiron moving through your sign, the focus is shifting from identity to value. In Aries, the question was, who are you? Now, with Chiron in Taurus, the question is, what are you worth? And the only person that gets to determine that is you. Over the next 7 years, Chiron may expose old wounds around money, security, self-esteem, and your relationship with receiving. You may discover that you've been measuring your value through productivity, achievement, or independence. The medicine in this wound is learning that your worth is not something that you earn, rather it's something that you inherently possess. Like a mountain possesses its height, like a river possesses its flow, like a tree possesses its roots. Your task for Chiron in Taurus is to stop proving your value and start believing in it. Now, Taurus and Taurus risings. This is your Chiron transit. The wounded healer is entering your sign, illuminating the places where you've learned to hide your pain behind competence, endurance, or self-sufficiency. Over the coming years, questions around identity, body image, aging, health, self-worth, and authenticity are going to come into sharper focus. Healing in the wound is not becoming someone else, but in becoming so fully yourself that you can't pretend anymore. Taurus often carries burdens quietly. Chiron is asking you to step into radical honesty. The medicine here is true self-acceptance. This is big work, really, really, really big work. So, best of luck to all of you Taurus sun and risings out there. I am genuinely here on the sidelines cheering on your rising. Moving on to Gemini and Gemini risings. For you, Chiron in Taurus is entering the hidden places, dreams, subconscious patterns, ancestral echoes, and grief. This may be one of the quieter Chiron journeys, but not necessarily an easier one. Old fears may rise to the surface, and long-buried wounds may ask to be acknowledged once again. The healing of this wound comes through rest, solitude, spiritual practice, therapy, contemplation, and most of all, just learning that some battles we must fight alone. Then we have Cancer and Cancer risings. For you, Chiron in Taurus begins working through your communities, your friendships, and your hopes for the future. Under this transit, you may become more aware of wounds around belonging. And this may look like deep reflection on times when you felt excluded or misunderstood. The next 7 years may help you to discover what genuine community actually looks and feels like the people who really show up for you. The medicine in this wound is learning that you don't have to carry everything alone, and that knowing your vulnerabilities is a strength that is to be carried with grace and dignity, and that doesn't take away from your inherent worth. Then we have Leo and Leo risings. Chiron in Taurus, for you, moves into the highest point of your chart, landing in career, visibility, purpose, and reputation. You may find yourself confronting questions like, am I good enough? Am I qualified enough? Do I deserve success? Do I deserve to be seen? And in this, old wounds around recognition may surface, so imposter syndrome also may surface. The healing in this wound comes when you stop chasing validation and begin defining success on your own terms. Under this transit, ultimately, you are learning authentic purpose. Next, we have Libra and Libra risings. For you, Chiron in Taurus enters one of the deepest regions of the chart, like shared resources, intimacy, loss, and trust, both self-trust and trust with others. This transit brings you into deep transformation. Old wounds around vulnerability may rise to the surface under this transit. You may be asked to examine where you've learned to protect yourself by staying emotionally distant or overly self-reliant. The healing in this wound comes through allowing others closer than what feels comfortable and really integrating that not everyone deserves access to your heart, and the discernment that's needed to find those who do. The medicine here is a deep trust of the self that ripples outward in every direction. Then we have Scorpio and Scorpio risings. Chiron in Taurus for you enters the realm of relationships. All partnerships are mirrors, but under this transit, you're going to be learning how to actually allow them to be teachers, to be healing chambers. Whether romantic, platonic, or professional, the people entering your life during this transit may illuminate old wounds around rejection, abandonment, compromise, or belonging. Under this transit, the goal is not perfect relationships, but conscious relationships. The medicine in this wound is learning that connection does not require self-sacrifice. Moving on, we have Sagittarius and Sagittarius risings. Chiron in Taurus for you moves into the realm of health, habits, routine, and daily life. This transit asks a very important question. What supports your well-being? And equally important, what doesn't? You may spend the years under this transit refining how you care for your body, your nervous system, your schedule, and maybe, most importantly, your energy. This wound may appear through burnout, stress, overextension, or neglecting your own needs. And the healing, the medicine in this wound, comes through consistency. The real deep medicine here is true devotion to your well-being. Then we have Capricorn and Capricorn rising. Chiron in Taurus for you enters the realm of creativity, joy, romance, pleasure, and self-expression. And this might sound lighter than some of the other placements, but often it isn't. Many Capricorns carry this wound around play and joy, which is really a wound around permission. The feeling that everything must be earned. The next 7 years may ask you to reconnect with delight for delight's sake, to create without monetizing, to enjoy without justifying, to love without calculating. The healing in this wound is finding medicine in joy. For my Aquarius and Aquarius risings, Chiron in Taurus enters the foundations of your chart, the place where home, family, roots, and ancestry, under the greater umbrella of belonging, come under review. Old family stories may resurface under this transit, and so may questions about where and with whom you feel safe. Some Aquarians may literally move homes during this period, and others may rebuild their inner sense of home. The healing in this wound comes through creating safety rather than waiting for it. The medicine here is finding rootedness. And finally, we come to Pisces and Pisces risings. For you, Chiron in Taurus enters the realm of communication, learning, storytelling, and the voice. You may become increasingly aware of wounds around speaking up or being heard, expressing yourself or sharing your truth, because perhaps there have been times when your voice was dismissed or misunderstood. So Chiron's work here is helping you to reclaim that for yourself. The healing in this wound is expression. Your words have power. The medicine here is learning how to use them. My dear listener, if Chiron in Aries taught us how to fight for ourselves, Chiron in Taurus is going to teach us how to care for ourselves. The next 7 years are asking us to build lives that support healing, that protect our peace, that enable us to trust that worth is not something we achieve, but rather something we remember to embody. And that's all I have for this transit. In my opinion, this is the most important transit of the year. Though the medicine that Chiron brings is slow work, I think the implications of moving into this Chiron and Taurus energy on a collective level are going to be massive. So with that, I'm incredibly hopeful for the ripple effects that we see with this transit, and I hope that you are too. Now we're nearing the end of the episode, but before we leave each other today, let's take a quick glance at the astro weather for July. This is an Almanac episode after all, and there are a few key events that are happening this month. First, both the planet of reality, Saturn, and the planet of dreams, Neptune, slow down in the fiery sign of the trailblazer, Aries. Saturn is going retrograde in Aries on July 7th, and Neptune is going retrograde in Aries on July 26th. These retrogrades are bringing an internal assessment of our personal power, boundaries, and our ultimate visions we have for ourselves. This double retrograde acts as a collective reality check for any impulsive movements that were started earlier in the year. It's going to cool down aggressive cultural friction, and it's going to force us to review our long-term strategies, our spiritual health, and our internal discipline. So during this time, remember to slow down and ensure that your actions align with your deeper spiritual integrity before charging forward. Then we have the highlight of the month, a rare alignment that sparks a fierce clash between belief systems and institutional power. On July 20th through the 21st, we have a Pluto-Jupiter opposition. This is all about ideological warfare, financial restructuring, and the exposure of hidden corruption. I think we're going to see a massive push and pull between the elite and the truth seekers, or common people. This opposition is going to force us to confront dogmatic thinking and greed and demand that power be used ethically. Under this astro weather, blind faith will not save outdated systems, and power must be backed up by truth. I'm a little nervous about this energy, to be quite honest with you, but I'm also approaching it with curiosity and hope. So just stay vigilant and aware on these days, and let us all work together to co-create a reality that we believe in. Then on July 26th, we have the destiny points of the moon changing signs, shifting the collective focus for the next 18 months. The North Node is going to be shifting into Aquarius, and the South Node is going to be shifting into Leo. This is moving us from individual ego to collective progress and humanitarian innovation, with the collective lesson here being that true brilliance is found in how we uplift each other, how we uplift society together, and not how we stand alone in the spotlight and in the patterned programming of modern society, which is toxic individuality. And finally, we have the lunations. The lunations in July are bringing a stark contrast between emotional introspection and forward-thinking collective action, which seems to be the theme for this month. On July 14th, we have a new moon in Cancer, which is bringing a collective urge to retreat, to rest, and to protect our peace. It's an ideal time for doing work around healing ancestral trauma, upgrading your living space, and resetting emotional boundaries. Mercury is also in retrograde during this new moon, so just be aware that plans might feel slow or confusing, and listen to your gut rather than your logic under this lunation. Then, on July 29th, we have a full moon in Aquarius. This full moon acts as a massive energetic exclamation point to the nodal shift into Aquarius that happens just 3 days prior. It's going to bring major culminations to group projects, sudden technological shifts, or societal breakthroughs, which is really cool given the other energies that we're seeing in this month. This full moon is shining a very bright spotlight on how well you balance your personal desires with the needs of the collective, and it is damn near forcing the release of mindsets that are blocking personal and greater innovations. All that being said, July is definitely shaping up to be an interesting month. It has the potential for very big breakthroughs, both collectively and individually. Innovation and community are taking the driver's seat and coming center stage as we all gather to kind of play our next move. And just saying that to you now and thinking about that really activates my energy in my body. It gets me kind of amped up, kind of excited. I wonder if you feel that too. If you do, let me know in the comments. But that's all I have for you. That's all I have for July. Thank you so much for joining me, and get ready to rumble this month. July is certainly going to be interesting. With that, laissez les bon temps rouler. My name is Wishamaya, and don't forget to keep your roots deep and your dreams wild.